Welcome to the Know Your Ship podcast, presented by eHub. I'm your host, Frank Dolce. Welcome back to the podcast. I've known this guy for a long time. I'm super excited to have him here, and it took a minute to get him scheduled because he's so busy all of the time.
It's just a facade that I put on.
Vacationing.
Yeah, exactly.
And working at the same time. But this is the one and only Chief Revenue Officer at EasyPost, Sam Hancock. Do you get this question all the time, by the way, with your last name? Are you related to one of our founding fathers?
I do.
And?
I mean, I can give you the story.
Is there a story?
Well, sort of.
This is the perfect start to a podcast.
John Hancock never actually had kids. So there's not any like true descendants of John Hancock.
Really?
However, my whatever great grandfather at one point adopted John Hancock. He was his uncle, and so he adopted John Hancock. So my ancestors or whatever were his kind of uncle, cousins, everything like that.
Oh my gosh. That's unbelievable. Do you feel it necessary for you to have a very stylistic signature now? That you know that's in your past?
No,
I think you should I think you should incorporate
I probably
that.
should,
Yeah,
but
no doubt.
Especially because I feel like all my job is now is signing contracts for vendors and sales contracts. Like that's pretty much like 24 hours of my day is just like signing NDAs, signing contracts, signing vendor agreements. That's all CROs do at this point. But,
P.S. You have to sign our release.
Yeah.
So. Yeah. Well, let's do that today. I mean, you have a real opportunity here because you know how I don't know how that would be related. He's not your uncle, but let's just call him Uncle John.
Yeah.
Okay. You have an opportunity because Uncle John's signature is like, that's everywhere.
It's iconic. I think there's
iconic.
It's up in Boston, right? Like there's a big sign of it in Boston, and
you have a real opportunity here.
Yeah.
I mean, you never know.
I should just pay somebody to give me a standard signature. And
yes. I think AI can do that now, right?
Yeah.
Why not?
Just give me the John Hancock signature with my name on it.
You know, another interesting fact about the founding fathers is that George Washington never had children.
Oh, I didn't know that.
Yes. He had adopted children, but he never had children of his own. And apparently he had some health issues that so he couldn't pass down.
Yeah. So my whatever ancestors owned all the merchant marine stuff back in the day in Boston, and he gave it to John Hancock, who then he lost everything in the Revolutionary War. So there's a famous story that the Britons were there in Boston, and they were going to bomb Boston to try to kick the Britons out, and basically John Hancock stood to lose everything because they were going to destroy all his ships. And he's like, like bomb away, like go do it. And so he pretty much lost everything. And then he was, if you really follow U.S. history, there's Articles of Confederation, which was the first form of government that they set up, and he was in theory the president under the Articles of Confederation. So he, in theory, was also the first president of the newly formed United States of America until they got rid of it, put the Constitution in, and George Washington became the president.
There we go. Give us just the 30,000 foot view of what is EasyPost.
Yeah, so EasyPost started in 2012. Our founder, Jarrett Streben, was looking to create a shipping API similar to what Stripe is for the financial industry. We're banking and taking payments and stuff like that. Wasn't a lot out there that was available. So he created EasyPost, which was really it's a headless API, and that's semi-technical term for what we do. I'm sure engineers will probably respond to this and be like, that guy's an idiot. I'm not a technical guy at all, so I always describe it as
well, you're in good company.
Yeah, I always describe it as a middleware that we help connect e-commerce companies, whether direct shippers or even just softwares that provide logistics solutions, to a wide variety of carriers. If you were to go and say, hey, I want to ship with UPS today, it would take you 3 months to build the integration, another 3 to 4 months to get certified by UPS to make sure your labels actually work in their machines and everything, their processing plants and everything. Where with EasyPost, it takes you, in theory, you could set it up in 5 minutes. You put in your UPS account and you can be off and shipping. Your labels are certified. You don't really have to do much.
Yeah.
So we really take that technical integration work down, help take the certification stuff down. And then moving forward, it's, we handle all the compliance. Carriers change a lot of what they're doing. I think a great example was last year, the FCC came out and changed hazmat requirements. So all of these carriers who ship stuff on planes had to change all of their hazmat classifications and kind of how they handled hazmat packaging. Then they go into their APIs and they change everything, and a customer will then have to go in and update everything that they're doing. With EasyPost, we just handle all that for you, and you don't have to worry about it anymore.
Yeah.
And so we really save a lot of engineering time, a lot of engineering effort. I always say this to people. I don't think I've ever ran into a company who said, we have too many engineers that work here. It's a talent pool that's, sometimes light. Everybody wants them. It's hyper competitive. So really a lot of what we try to tell people is that, hey, you're probably using 3 to 4 engineers to maintain your carrier stuff. Just let us handle it. You can take it down to maybe a half an engineer's time and take those engineers and do something else, do something cool, build other cool projects, right? Or, build, a better website, better marketing, right? Whatever you need, just take those resources and move them somewhere else.
Alleviating pain for your customers in that area. By the way, I always say about eHub that we have too many engineers who work here.
Well, I've met some of them, so I can see why. No.
But then we're always in a situation where like, why can't we get people to get this done? They're like, well, we need more engineers.
Yeah.
So I'm like, okay.
Yeah.
Well,
roadmap is always full.
Yeah.
And you can never move fast enough.
That's so true. Well, it's a fascinating business, and Jarrett he's a genius level kind of guy. If you've ever, I've had a chance to visit with him. Obviously,
and you graduated from the University of Utah, so a lot of people are genius level to you. So.
Very, very, very well said.
Just for everybody's edification, I graduated from BYU, so yeah.
We won't hold that against you.
Yeah,
though. And look what I did for you today. I'm all blued out here today, just in honor of your presence. So you're welcome.
Well, I appreciate it.
Colors don't define me. But I just like the story about how Jarrett saw this opportunity in the market.
Yeah,
this great entrepreneurial spirit, and went after it, and has built this really amazing company. How many people do you have at EasyPost now?
I think we're around 450 people the last time I looked. I've stopped looking because I think I start hyperventilating a little bit, right. Specifically around how many people are in my organization, and I'm like, I feel like I've probably only met 30% of them, and probably only interact with about 10% of them. But all these people are making sure that I make the right decisions at times, and it can be overwhelming to think about that.
Yeah, well, you must have a lot of good people on your team. The shipping and logistics industry is ever changing, always evolving. How do you stay on top of everything that's happening? I mean, you work directly with all of these carriers, and who knows on a weekly basis if USPS is going to institute some new program, or there's going to be a new fuel surcharge with UPS or FedEx, or DHL is going to introduce a new program. You guys have to be on top of all of that. It's critical for you and for your customer.
Yeah, and to be honest, it was actually really hard even like 4 or 5 years ago. So I've been at EasyPost for about 6 years, and when I first started, carriers did not like us. They actually looked at us as an impediment to their goals. They didn't like the idea that somebody else might own the customer relationship. Mm-hmm. And so they looked at us as like some middleman that was, gonna take their baby, and and that's evolved over the years, over the last 4 or 5 years. Actually, it was probably about 3 years ago that we created a very specific like carrier management relationship team, with the idea of how do we start building bridges with some of these carriers. And it was funny because when we built the team, the first thing was, this is going to take years, Sam, before, we make any progress. Like UPS, FedEx, USPS, right? DHL, these are behemoth companies. I mean, thousands upon thousands of people that work for these companies. They don't move fast. We don't even have contacts at some of these companies right now. And, so it was a big investment by the company. And, over the last 4 or 5 years, I think technology has evolved, and even carriers have evolved in terms of kind of understanding that if they want to be successful, they actually do have to start working with technology providers, because they're not technology companies, right? They're logistics companies, and they're really, really, really great logistics companies. I'll never be a logistics company. We'll never be as efficient as moving a package from point A to point B as somebody like FedEx, right? But what we can be really great at, and where we can actually help carriers, is, helping bridge the technology gap that a lot of e-commerce companies actually do have, to help them get more packages into their system. And so we created that team, and it's, it was a very slow process for us to start working with the FedExes and the UPSs and the USPSs of the world. But now we have really great relationships with them, and, it's less about us trying to pull from them, and now they're starting to, push stuff to us. And so that's very, very helpful. Not saying it's always perfect, but yeah, it is hard. I mean, to the point about the roadmap, I mean, we essentially have 80% of our roadmap built out for FedEx is going to change whatever compliance stuff they're going to change this year, and we have to adapt to it. Yeah. And USPS is going to change some stuff, and so, we have to stay on top of that, and it is challenging, and there's trade-offs, right? Like, sometimes we have to make a decision if we're going to do this thing for FedEx versus this thing for USPS, or vice versa, or whatever it may be.
Gotcha. Well, the carrier piece is really interesting because way back when, especially before technology was really prevalent in the industry, carriers could kind of own the customer. And they weren't interested in offering some sort of multi-carrier solution. I mean, UPS isn't going to say, hey, you can ship all the other carriers on our platform too. It was, you're going to use UPS. Yeah. And here's our platform.
Volume discounts.
Absolutely. All of that stuff. Well, and it was just kind of a natural evolution in the market that multi-carrier platforms developed and came around. Carriers found themselves kind of at the back end of that. And now, how do we manage this technology in the marketplace? And so, utilizing the distribution platforms, EasyPost, eHub, to give the customer the best experience, the carriers have to get kind of aligned with the platform. So that's where you guys have been really successful. That's something that we think that we've done pretty well in the marketplace, and just managing that constant evolution. I'm curious, what do you think? Where is it headed? I mean, it seems like there's always change. That's the constant in the industry. There's always change. So where is this headed? Are we looking at like what we see in college? I know you love college football. I love college football. Are we looking at like
college football?
Two massive
EA Sports drops on Monday. So
how about that? So okay, so the Pac-12 went away, and now it's the Big 12, the Big 10, and the SEC, and
Florida State and Clemson are rumored to join the Big 12. So
is this where we're headed with the logistics industry? Are we going to have like a couple super conferences?
Yeah, just a couple of mega shippers. They're just going to snatch up. I do think maybe there's eventually going to be somewhat of a consolidation in the market. Lots of regionals out there. I mean, EasyPost supports domestically 80 carriers, right? I don't think people realize that there's 80 carriers to even be had. And that's parcel carriers. That's not even freight carriers, right? So you add freight in, and then it gets into the thousands and thousands, because anybody with a truck and a CDL license can be a carrier. But yeah, I could see a consolidation coming. You know, I think one of the things I'm interested in right now is On Track is, you know, they did the merger with LaserShip, and you know, so they had the East Coast and the West Coast, and now they're launching in Chicago and in Texas to try to become like the first, you know, domestic nationwide carrier to go compete with the big guys. So that will be interesting to see how successful they are moving forward. But you know, I think that there's going to be a kind of continuing to inch towards the middle between the carriers and all the technology providers to kind of figure out how do we actually work together. I think a lot of that is actually going to be driven by the actual e-commerce companies themselves, not necessarily EasyPost or eHub or FedEx or UPS. I think a lot of these e-commerce companies are realizing that there is a lot of savings in shipping. There is a lot of things they don't know right now. You know, I always give this example to people. We have several customers who are shipping, you know, anywhere between 50 to 100,000 packages per month, which is that's nothing to sneeze at, right? That's a lot of packages.
Lot of volume.
And they're single threaded, and they have like one guy who's managing their shipping, right? And you talk to that guy about going multi-carrier. You talk about, you know, what his time in transits are. You talk to him about, you know, how he's performing in Florida, and like if he's seeing delays, and they're kind of like, I don't know, man. Like I spun up a UPS account, and that's what it was, right? But I think they're realizing now that it's like, hey, we actually have to start looking at this data, and that's where a lot of decision making is coming through. Of like, oh, hey, if we actually supplemented, you know, our shipping in New York with something like On Track, we could save $1 a package, right? And that could represent 20,000 shipments a month at $20,000. You know, you're talking about, you know, $250,000 a year just in one area of your shipping business. And, you know, there's more analytics coming out, more platforms like eHub who are providing information to customers to make better decisions. Same thing with EasyPost. And so I think what's going to happen is that these e-commerce companies are going to keep driving these carriers as well as technology partners to be better and to get them more information and to have them make better decisions, which is going to make the carriers and the technology partners really come together and say, hey, how do we solve problems for these e-commerce companies? And how do we do it together so that neither one of us are out in the cold kind of holding the bag and you know, realizing that we kind of missed the boat.
Yeah. Well, it's interesting too, because with you mentioned you work with 80 different carriers, small parcel carriers domestically alone.
Yeah.
And if you're just looking at the small parcel market, there is a level of sophistication that needs to be in place to manage all of that. So you could look at all the data, and we provide all that data of like, okay, you know, in East Coast, if you were shipping this way, then you're going to save whatever per package, and your transit time's going to improve. But that's not the same carrier that's going to be your most efficient for Texas or for California or somewhere in the Midwest. But now you're looking at, are we going to incorporate 17 different carriers into our warehouse to try and drive the maximal efficiency and price reduction that we can? That's difficult. That's challenging, and having enough dock doors and everything else. So at the moment, it is a little bit of finding that, you know, compromising a little bit, finding the right mix of carriers that you can manage to gain as much efficiency as possible, price reduction as possible, and still be efficient in the warehouse.
Yeah, I would say on the EasyPost side, like the most carriers that we see being utilized are somewhere between that like 8 to 12 range. And, you know, and these are big, sophisticated shippers. Mm-hmm. A lot of 3PLs are multi-carrier,
sure.
and, you know, several distribution centers as well, right? So, you know, they're not going to use you know, an On Track. Maybe On Track's a bad example. Better Trucks, that's a Midwest kind of small parcel carrier. Like, they're not going to use their California warehouse for Better Trucks, right? Like, you know, they're just going to ship it out of their Midwest facilities. But So yeah, 8 to 12 on the really large scale. But I would say most common is, they have one of the big four, and then they're supplementing some of that volume with a regional in some area where maybe they have one of their distribution centers, right?
Sure.
That's probably the most common. I think too, where the industry might be headed is right now there's a lot of specifically, and EasyPost is more geared towards enterprise type shippers. We don't really support the SMB segment of shippers very well. I think where some of the industry is headed as well is a lot of legacy kind of on-prem software that's in those facilities and those shippers are using.
Yeah.
I think they're realizing it's slowing them down.
Absolutely.
Right? Like you go on-prem because you have a little bit more control and the speeds are a little bit faster. But then in this new world we live in, UPS decides in 2021, I'm not going to pick up your packages. Right? And all of a sudden you're like, oh no, what am I going to do? And fair to UPS, right? Like everybody was overloaded, right? And so they had to figure out, how do we actually deliver packages, and we can't deliver everything because we just don't have the capacity to do it. So a lot of customers were stuck saying, oh man, what do I do? Like, I'm single-threaded UPS and they may not come to my door and pick it up. And now I have this on-prem legacy shipping software, and adding a new carrier is a kind of a nightmare.
Challenge. Yep.
And I have 3 distribution centers. And so I have to go to each single distribution center and roll out changes. And so, I think where a lot of people want to get to is maybe sacrifice some of the speed stuff in order to be more nimble in the larger decisions and being able to deploy really easily across your network to say, okay, hey, we're going to add DHL in and we're going to deploy it right now across 4 distribution centers.
Yeah.
Really easy, really simple, so that they can make faster decisions and be more nimble in what they do.
Yeah, absolutely. No question. Well, it's a fascinating industry, and we could talk all day about that. But I would like to get into some other things with that EasyPost is doing, and more specifically about your background. I'm fascinated by the Tour de France, and I watch it every day. And of course, EasyPost is a sponsor of the EF Education-Easypost team.
Yeah,
and so I like to watch those guys. I have a question for you and your personal background. We know you graduated from BYU because you came in here like trumpeting that the first thing you said.
Go
when
Cougs.
You walked in. It's like, go Cougs. And then you did this hand signal. I didn't know what it was. I thought we were gonna like fight. But did you grow up thinking that you were going to be a chief revenue officer in the shipping and logistics industry? I mean, is that what you were playing?
Yeah, that was in my diary as
putting mail and packages when you were a kid, and dressing up as a postman, stuff like that. That was your
funny enough, my grandfather was a postmaster general at his local post office in Chico, California, which is near where I grew up. But anyway, that besides the point. He was a letter carrier for a long time.
Speaking of the postmaster general, the first postmaster general in the United States was also a founding father. If I get this wrong, you can edit it out, right? It's been Benjamin Franklin.
Oh, I didn't know that either.
Yeah. First postmaster general. Benjamin Franklin. There you go. Okay, so bringing it all back to the Hancock stuff.
You know what? I grew up in a really small town in California, a very poor community as well. And my idea of like being wealthy and affluent was actually teachers. Like, that's because we grew up in a poor community and they would seem to be the ones driving nicer cars.
Yeah.
As you get older, you realize, wow, teachers don't make anything. Which is, always a shame, but
absolutely,
so no, I didn't know what software was. I didn't know, what sales was. I didn't know anything. And, I graduated from high school. I am LDS, so I served a mission, and, there's always that weird kind of gap year, where you graduate, you don't go on your mission until you're 19. And So I kind of just hung around. I think I took some classes at a community college nearby until I went on my mission. I came back and I was pushing grocery carts at the grocery store because, again, there's just no industry in Orville where you can, get real, high-paying jobs or anything like that. And my brother, who's about 7 years older than me, was out here in Utah, and he was working at a startup company that nearly went bankrupt. So he called me up and said, hey, would you want to come out here and work for me for free? I'm only going to pay you based on commissions, and you can live in my basement until you start getting some money and you can, support yourself and move out of my basement because I have 2 kids and I don't really want you living in my basement.
That sounds like an amazing offer.
Yeah.
Did you jump at it immediately?
No, I actually did because I'm like, well, I'm just pushing carts. Like, it can't get much worse than this.
Hey, Kurt Warner, before he won the Super Bowl, was working in a grocery store. I mean, maybe there's something there.
So I moved out to Utah. This was like February of 2008, and I started working at a software company doing sales. And it actually started going really well. And, I wasn't like the most amazing sales rep, but I wasn't terrible either. And, in 2008, I mean, this is really where like software as a service was still relatively in its infancy. Mm-hmm. Like it wasn't like, it was really starting to gain momentum. And they came to me and said, we had gotten to the point where we'd sold so many contracts and they were always up for annual renewal that it was hard to renew current contracts while selling new ones. And so they came to me and said, hey, would you be interested in moving into kind of like some kind of account management role? So again, this was well before customer success was a thing in software. And, I always enjoyed the relationship side of things versus like the cold killer sales guy type side of things.
Yeah.
And so I said, yeah, sure, that sounds great. And so I did that for about 3 years. And then I actually moved back out to California because they moved the headquarters to San Francisco. So I lived there for about a year. And, I was 25 at the time and feeling like maybe I wanted to get on with life a little bit because, I came home from my mission. It was just kind of a mad sprint doing all of this stuff. And I wasn't married and, kind of wanted to do that. So I actually quit and went back and moved back to Utah and, applied to BYU and started attending BYU. And gotcha. I had always had a dream to be a broadcast journalist. That was what I wanted to do.
So that's what you grew up thinking.
Sorry, long answer to the original question.
I love it. I love it. And so you came back from your mission. Typically, I guess not typically, but you go on your mission. Graduate high school, kids will go to college for a year, then go on a mission, come back and immediately go back to college.
Yeah.
You didn't do that.
Didn't do that. I worked for 4 years.
You started working and then you went back to school and you decided you were going to be a broadcast journalist. And I know on your LinkedIn page that you produced like the Cougar Hour.
KBYU Channel 11, yeah.
Yes.
I think I had that right. Brother Curtis, who was the teacher, if I got that wrong, I do apologize if you ever watched this.
It was so meaningful, I can't remember the name. How did you like that, by the way?
Oh, I loved it. I thought it was so much fun. Like, I loved, when I was there, the elections were actually going on. So this was the sorry, I'm trying to remember when my son was born. The 2014 election cycle was going on. So this wasn't a presidential, but like there was a Orem mayor race, and I covered that.
Oh.
And I just thought it was so much fun. In fact, actually, quick story about that. There seemed to be a prohibitive favorite in the Orem mayor race at the time. And so I actually went to the guy who everyone thought was going to win to his celebration party and to film everything and to get the story and everything. And as the night went on, it was like, the numbers aren't the numbers aren't as what everybody thought they were going to be. And then it just kind of kept going and going, and it was like, the room just was getting quieter and quieter. And then finally, I'm like, I got to go to the guy who's actually going to win. And I'm like packing up, and they're like, "Oh, where are you going?" And I'm like, "Well, I gotta go to the guy who's going to win." So I went over there, I tailed it across town and, set up my camera and, got some sound bites and everything. But no, I really loved it. And I did an internship at Channel 2 News here in Salt Lake. And I was just doing some producing type stuff. I did a couple of stories for them where I wasn't the actual reporter. I just kind of wrote it. And then, the actual reporter read the story.
Yeah.
And, loved that. I actually got a job offer from Channel 2. Again, this was 2014, and to produce the 4 a.m. news. Didn't know that there was 4 a.m. news.
I was going to ask that question. Is there 4 a.m. news?
Yeah. Wow. Had no idea. And, the news director at the time, there were a lot of people that were pressuring me to take that job, actually. People at BYU, some of the other internships that I had done, were really pressuring me to take that job because it was like a feather in their cap that like, oh, hey,
we placed this guy.
Yeah, we placed this guy, especially in the top 30 market, right? Like that's not super common. And the news director, I actually don't remember his name, but like I'm almost every day very grateful for him. He actually sat me down and said, hey, look, we think you're great. We want you to work here. But if you don't absolutely love this, please do not take this job. He's like, it's long hours, it's low pay. Mind you, what they offered me was less than what my wife was making as a teacher at the time. So she was teaching up in, West Jordan.
Yeah.
And he was like, it's, the news has changed so much. Like it used to be, huge contracts, people get paid a lot of money. Now it's bare bottom, but you're still working just as hard. I think he told me at the time, like people in the news had the highest or third highest divorce rate after like police officers in like the Army.
Oh my gosh.
And so he's just like, just don't take it if you don't truly love this. And, lots of conversations with my wife and, we actually had a baby on the way, like 2 weeks away from being born. And I had worked in software and I had loved software. Like it wasn't like it was my dream growing up to do it, but I liked it enough that I knew I'd be happy doing it. And so I turned down the job offer, much to the dismay of some people. In fact, I really did have some people who, were pretty upset with me. I went and interviewed at a local tech company here in Utah, got a job as a customer success manager, and that was kind of it, right? And I took that job, and everything, not easy, but it's life feels very fulfilled, even though it's not necessarily what I wanted. I think most people realize as they get older, your best day at work is never better than your worst day at home, and that's kind of what matters is, being able at times to just come home and relax and not worry about things, be able to live a lifestyle that is good for me and my family. And so that's kind of, I very grateful to that director, that boss, many years ago who was very honest and real with me.
Well, when you're talking about that, I just keep thinking of Anchorman and how glamorous being in the newsroom.
But it was in the 70s, right? Or whenever Anchorman was set, right?
Yeah, in the 70s. Oh, do you think it was real? I think it was really like that.
Yeah. No, I mean he like sat me down and was like, yeah, we used to pay reporters like $150,000 a year, and we'd give them like this $20,000 wardrobe budget, and he was like, now I basically offer a reporter like 60 grand, if that, and like there's no budget for clothes, and he's like, it's just changed. It's changed over the years. People don't get their news from watching the TV as much anymore. It's all about, Google and, getting on the web and your phone and Twitter and getting your news.
Yeah. Unfortunately, I fall into that category. I rarely.
Oh, yeah.
And I felt like I was a long time holdout. But I rarely watch local news anymore.
Yeah.
It's just.
I was like in a hotel the other day and they had the New York Times, like the actual physical paper, and I was like, oh wow,
wait,
like,
what's this?
Was it like an printing this?
It's like an antique display. Yeah. This is what we used to do.
Yeah, and I was actually like, oh, like somebody's still printing these.
Yeah. Well, okay, so you transitioned then from, you had a big career in the broadcast industry, you decided to move away from that, got into customer success.
Yeah.
And wait, what was your degree in broadcast?
Yeah, it's communications with a broadcast journalism emphasis, basically.
Okay. But you got into this customer success area. Did you find it with that software company in that role that kind of fit your personality, your strengths, or how did that develop to where you are today? Because people look at a chief revenue officer and they would say, oh yeah, this guy probably has like some accounting or finance or business or some kind of background. That doesn't seem like it's necessarily the case.
No, not at all. It's actually funny because customer success is looked at and viewed as this very like relationship-driven type role. I actually am a firm believer that it's not. Don't get me wrong. You have to be able to talk to people, and you have to you can't be afraid to do stuff. I actually view customer success as somebody who is, generally highly organized, resilient in a lot of ways, because usually most customers are talking to you because they're mad at you.
Because nobody ever calls and says, Sam, I could not be more pleased with what EasyPost is doing for us today.
Right. Yeah, you never get those phone calls. You only get the, hey, I'm ticked because something's wrong calls.
Yes.
And so I always tell people, in fact, when I used to interview people, I'd always ask, hey, what's the number one quality of a customer success person? 9 out of 10 times I'd get, empathy. And I'd be like, not hireable.
Fascinating.
Because what I found was people who were highly empathetic, it was too consuming for them. Oh. Right? They would just get too consumed in terms of all I hear about are fires all day and problems all day, and I just can't take it anymore. And it's like they're this sponge.
And you can't solve all the problems.
And it's just they soak it all in until finally they hit that breaking point. So, I always tell people it's resilience. It's getting kicked in the teeth every day and then waking up and be like, hey, that was a lot of fun. Let's go do that again. But highly organized too. And in a lot of ways, just operators, right? And that's where I've always kind of viewed my skill set as just kind of thinking through operations and how things should be structured. And, it's funny. I was working at a software company. I got recruited to go interview at another very prominent software company in the Valley. I'll not name them. Got to the point where it was met with the CEO, seemed to go really well. Even the CEO was like, yeah, we're totally going to make you an offer. And then didn't get the offer. And I kind of followed up and said, hey, what happened? And they were like, well, we just didn't think that, we just view customer success guys as being real gregarious and boastful and, just real happy all the time.
Personality.
And you just seemed very level-headed and, just didn't seem to fit the mold. And
you don't like those real analytic, organized guys.
Yeah. Oh. And so I didn't get the job. And then 6 months later, I found out they let that guy go because he couldn't, figure out how to do things. Yeah, I couldn't do the day-to-day stuff, and but and then I've always viewed one of my strengths as also just being very, I guess non-emotional is maybe the best way to put it. Mm-hmm. I don't really react to things very quickly. I usually, if something happens that's bad or even good, I kind of take a deep breath, wait a little while, which I think is really important in sales and in just life and in general in relationships, right? I mean, we've been working together for a long time, and we have channel conflict at times, and we have things that happen between us, and it can be easy to get really worked up and emotional over it. But just seeing what the long-term vision is and what the real macro level is around relationships, I feel like that's always been a strength of mine, is to just not react to just little things that happen along the way.
Little speed bumps.
Yeah, little speed bumps along the way, and just, hey, very calculated. How do we move forward? What's the bigger picture, so that we're all happy, right?
It's such a great trait, and I'm glad that you talked about that, because I don't know that I would have put my finger on it the way that you did. in our working relationship, but I think you do manage situations exactly as you described. And we do have channel conflict, and we do have issues that we have to face. And
by the way, we don't just have channel conflict with eHub, just so everyone's clear.
No, it's everyone else too.
We just work in an industry that there's just a lot of crossover.
Absolutely. But I will say, whenever there's a problem, a situation that we've faced together, you've always managed it in a way that we've felt like, wait, there's a path forward. This isn't a cataclysmic event.
Yeah.
It's an event, and we have to manage it, which is fascinating and great, because I can be an initial reactor. That's not necessarily a great thing.
I've seen you on the golf course.
Yeah. Well, snap hooking it, it just gets you after a while. You just can't take that. But you manage it in a way and I think that's a great lesson for people in the industry, whatever industry they're working in, is to be able to take a deep breath, look at a situation, analyze a situation, and the traits that you described are really important. Being organized, being analytical, and I really like the thing about being resilient.
Yeah.
Those aren't just traits for a chief revenue officer. I mean, those are traits for success generally, because no matter where you are, what position you're in, or what you're doing, you're going to get kicked in the gut at some point.
Yep.
How are you going
to handle disappointment?
How are you going to manage that?
Yeah.
And that's what you do really well. Is that something that you think about regularly? Is that something that you help train with your teams, or is that just something like that's your genetic makeup? That's how you were built.
Yeah, I mean, I think some of it is genetic makeup a little bit, and just kind of how I grew up, and I think some of it too is, when you do work in customer success for a long time and you hear about problems, you just naturally start building up a resilience to emotional customers or emotional situations, right? So I think there's some things there. I think too, some of it is just. So I served my mission in Japan, and there's a very classic saying. It's called shogunai, and basically what it means is you shouldn't worry about things you can't control, right? And I've really kind of, in some ways, have really ingrained that into my thought process of like, look, I can't control whether or not the software is up or down. I can't control whether or not a partner, didn't realize that they were talking to one of our current customers, right? Like, there's so many things I can't control. So like, I'm not going to cry over spilled milk, and, I'm going to just do my best to say, what's the path forward, right? This happened. How do we get through it? Something that was outside of everyone's control, let's not sit here and reminisce, and let's actually just figure out how do we solve the problem.
Yeah. Well, it's very, Marcus Aurelius, great Stoic emperor, would align with that philosophy.
Yeah.
Especially, you can't worry about the things you can't control. Worry about the things that you can control. Focus on that.
Yep.
And let the other stuff. You can't let the other stuff overwhelm you, because it can be overwhelming when all of these things are hitting you all of the time. How do you, in an organization of 450 people, a really diverse crowd, how do you, that's got to be like a cultural thing that you've described. How do you manage a culture, an industry like that, and keep kind of everybody? I always say this, like championship teams, it's not always about the best guy. If it was about the best guy, then LeBron James would win championships every single year. But it's about culture, and it's about having as many people, the highest percentage of people on the team, all moving in the right direction. How do you manage that in your role?
Yeah, if I had a great answer here, EasyPost would probably be a much bigger company than it is today. So when I started EasyPost, we had I had literally 2 direct reports at the time. I was just starting their customer success function, and now I think I'm at like 209 people after 6 years, and it's really hard. There is a lot of balance between trying to move the company forward, trying to get everybody on the same page, managing personalities and what other individuals want, what other departments might want, right? It is very challenging. And so I've stopped trying to, and this is new for me too. Like, this isn't like, hey, I've been doing this for 6 years and I'm great at it. But I've tried to step out of a role of trying to be like this dictator of like, this is how we're going to do everything, right? And this is what I want. And try to move into more of a role of, here's the vision, and here's what we want to happen, right? Now, you in customer success, I have a director of customer success. I have a VP of sales. I have a director of marketing. I have a, head of delivery and implementation, right? I have a head of support, right? How do you fit into that vision, and how do you, what do you need to do to be successful in getting to our vision, right? I don't care how the sausage is made, right? So our customer success team has a much different culture from our sales team, and our sales team has a much different culture from our marketing team, right? And it's just, let me allow you to play to your strengths, right? Like, I have my strengths, you have your strengths, and those are 2 different things. If you try to do it my way, you're probably not going to be that successful at doing it. And then from there, it goes down to another level. It goes down to the management team. So, again, like, our commercial sales team has a much different culture from our enterprise sales team, right? Even though they're all sales, right? But they, that manager kind of is doing things his way and what he thinks is the best way to do it, all with the vision of, here's where EasyPost is going. Here's the goals that we have to hit. And so less dictating around, here's how we want things done, and here's how, I want my culture to be.
Yes.
And more around, let me get out of the way and let you do your job, right? The best way that you can do your job. You've probably read, or maybe you haven't, it's called Strength Finders.
I have not.
So interesting book. Basically, it kind of flies in the face of this, idea that we should like improve our weaknesses. The book basically talks about how, instead of trying to improve your weaknesses, like, lean into your strengths.
That's great.
Because
I love it.
You're never going to make your weaknesses as good as your strengths. Right?
Yeah.
No
or
matter
even
how
improving
much,
your strengths.
Yeah. And so, so that's kind of, I've used that book a little bit in terms of that philosophy of like, hey, I'm not going to ask my head of implementation to do something, be somebody he's not.
Sure.
Right? Let him run his org the way he sees that he wants to run his org. And then, again, and then it goes all the way down to the individual contributor level, which is, okay, my goal is, bring in $800,000 in sales in the next year, right? Allow them to figure out the best way to do that, because, you could have a red personality, you could have a blue personality,
Absolutely.
I don't know, a personality, I don't know.
Yellow. I think there's yellow, green,
personality
blue, red.
types, right?
Yeah.
But like, those 2 people are not going to accomplish the goal the same way. And that's not a bad thing. And, all we care about is that, did you accomplish the goal? And then, what I try to tell the management team at EasyPost is, we are the people that unblock things, right, from the individual contributors. So if your sales rep has something that's blocking them, either you figure out how to unblock it, or you escalate until we figure out how we actually solve that problem.
Gotcha. Well, I think that's super insightful about culture. Having a well-defined vision.
Yeah.
For that everybody knows, everybody can see, everybody understands, and then letting people get to that vision.
Yeah.
In whichever way they can most effectively. I bet you could go around to lots of different companies and say, hey, company A, what is it that you guys are trying to accomplish? You could ask 10 people, and 10 people would give you a different answer.
Yeah.
So without a clear vision of where you want to go, it's really hard to keep or to have a culture that's pushing or pulling in the right direction or in that particular direction. So very super insightful.
Starbucks actually did that, I think. And they asked, a bunch of people what the company vision was, and nobody could actually articulate it. And so Starbucks, one of the most successful companies
absolutely
in the world, right? I was just over in Europe a couple months ago, and there's Starbucks everywhere
every
over
street
there.
corner.
Right, yeah. And, and it's not easy. EasyPost has had its struggles in that regard. Some of it's self-inflicted. Some of it is, visions change, right? You learn new things, and you realize maybe the vision we had wasn't the right vision because of, whatever reasons. EasyPost was a heavy, PC postage company,
sure.
right? And that dynamic has changed a little bit for us, and we still love the USPS. We think they're a great organization to work with, but we've realized that as a company, in order for us to survive and to really move forward, we have to also change from being heavy USPS to how do we offer other products and services. And so the API, the carrier API, is still core to EasyPost, but in the last 2 years we've bought 9 different companies. And the vision changes after every time you buy another company. And
that's challenging, trying to incorporate that. And now you have this vision that maybe changes slightly or expands to incorporate this other entity. Yeah. Super challenging.
So it's, and that's the other thing I think is like, you be flexible, right? Like, don't get so rigid in your way of thinking. And I actually had a great, aha moment, I guess you will. A couple of weeks ago, we launched a new product, and about a year ago, and we've been trying to get it off the ground, and we have some customers using it, but one of the customers came back and was very frustrated, was going to leave the platform. And the product that we have is actually really geared towards our support team. They probably handle 90% of that product load, from customer interaction to setup to everything. And I kind of went to our head of support, who's great, he's amazing. And I was like, hey, dude, like, what happened here? And, he was like, well, product and engineering and our, finance team, they defined all these processes, and, and so I just followed the book. I just, what the books told me to do, right? And, and so that's why the customer's, upset. And I was like, well, do you agree with the process? And he's like, well, no, of course I don't, but that's what the process said. And my aha moment was really just, oh, I have not empowered you to feel like you can step out of the process and help you understand that you can change this. You feel like you're just a cog in the wheel, right? Just following the steps. And that's on me, right? And I should have been, to your point, painting the vision to him as to what we were trying to accomplish and how he fit into that vision, right? And I failed to do that. And so we lost this big customer, which, I think we actually got him back now. But we had to have a conversation of, hey, these are my kind of expectations, and this is my vision around this product. Now you should feel empowered, right? To be more bold and, tell people this process isn't good, right? And
well, part of that is sometimes you have the person or department individual who's building the process and like, oh yeah, this is going to be a really good process, without having the interaction at the on the street.
Yeah.
And so what looks
everything looks great on a whiteboard.
Absolutely. Until you get to the actual customer and they're like, this doesn't work at all.
Yeah.
And so now giving that person, that individual, the opportunity to come back and say, look, this isn't going to work. We have to tweak this. We have to change this.
Yeah.
And I think that's super insightful. Again, creating the vision and understanding so that people at all levels feel empowered to improve what's happening, solve problems at the customer level.
Yeah. Yeah. And I think sometimes you just kind of get stuck in this is who we are, right?
Sure.
You hear that a lot, right?
Absolutely.
Like, my role is this.
Yep.
And that's what I follow. And so me as a leader, I felt more and more over the last probably year or so that like I have to get my management team and, all the leaders at EasyPost, and then even in the individual contributor level, to stop thinking about what my checklist role is, and, how do they step outside of that box to say, hey, I can actually add value over here because I know what's going on the streets. So let me feel empowered to actually go and make suggestions and make changes so that, we can accomplish the EasyPost goal.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, that's great stuff. Very insightful. Love it. But now we're going to my next favorite part of the podcast. This is called 3 Random Questions.
Okay.
Are you being super thoughtful? I kind of want to try and ask you something that's going to make you explode, but it doesn't seem like that's in your not in your personality. Maybe not. Well, let me ask you this. You have this really interesting background of thought you wanted to be in broadcasting, and then you kind of like software. You worked with your brother for a while, and you landed in this spot. If you looking back across your career and we're sitting where you're now, and you're super successful, if you could do anything else, if you could be anything else, what would that be?
Jim Nance. I mean,
that was too easy.
Yeah, it's too easy, right?
Yeah. Do you have the voice? Can you?
No, I don't.
Friends.
Yeah, hello, friends.
Welcome to Butler Cabin.
No, yeah, Jim Nance would be like the ideal, job,
Yeah.
right? I mean, who doesn't want to go?
Bad, is it?
Who doesn't want to go from, major sporting event to major sporting event, and announce and meet really cool people. I actually think I saw on Twitter today that he was playing a bunch of like random courses in Scotland because the Scottish Open is going on right now. But
well, that's the other thing is he's a really good golfer.
Yeah.
So he's a sports broadcaster and he's a good golfer.
Yeah.
That's pretty good.
So probably that. But if I was
lives at Pebble Beach.
Yeah, if I was staying in like realism, and not grandiose dreams, I actually I did at one point really want to become a teacher. And in my job, I'm actually somewhat fortunate that there is a lot of teaching that happens in what I do, and but I find a lot of joy out of just like working with people and teaching people, and I actually do CrossFit. Done CrossFit for 10 years now. It doesn't look like it because I also love cookies. So
man, you and me both.
Yeah.
If there's a pastry box,
I brought my. Exactly.
I know I always bring one in. But if there's a pastry nearby, I can't get around it. Like it's gone.
Yeah. But I actually got like an L1 CrossFit coaching certificate.
So you can teach?
So I can teach. I mean, it's expired now because I'm just too busy and I can't do it. But I was even when I was at EasyPost, I was, occasionally in the morning time, like teaching classes. And just, teaching people how to lift, teaching people how to, do certain movements. And so I just have always really gravitated towards teaching. So, at one point I thought I was going to become a history teacher as well, like when I was, 15.
Yeah.
But,
it's kind of sad because there's, in lots of ways, that's an idealistic life. Teaching, the profession is difficult, especially these days, I think. And the compensation is enormously upside down for what teachers do. But you might have great opportunities now to go and teach on college campuses with all of your experience, and that may be something you could
be like an adjunct professor or something like that, or just come in and do guest speaking at some classes.
With a tweed coat on, maybe those little round glasses. Fit in really well.
So
I don't know if there's any openings at the U for a guy like you, but maybe down south.
Maybe where they scrape the bottom of the barrel.
Okay. Random question number 2. Do you have a favorite? This isn't the random question. This is just a regular question. Do you have a favorite professional football or sports team, I guess?
So I grew up in Northern California. Unfortunately, I root for the bad Northern California teams, which are, now they're in Vegas, but the Raiders and the A's. Grew up going to a lot of A's games. When I was out in San Francisco for the year working, I actually had season tickets to the A's. So yeah, Raider and A's fan, which is kind of nice that they're now closer versus being in the Bay Area and worried, about going to Oakland Coliseum and the danger that
presents. I read an article the other day. It was not a glowing report of Oakland.
Yeah, that area down by the Coliseum and the airport is, I think pretty much everyone's moved out.
Yeah.
And then basketball. When I grew up, the Warriors and the Kings were just terrible. And as a short white kid who would come to Utah during the summers to visit family, John Stockton was, the guy.
He's your hero?
Yeah, so... the guy who got the assist, because they were too small to get their shot off in basketball, and
he didn't really dunk. Although I think he could.
Yeah, I'm sure he probably could. I mean, he's actually a fairly amazing athlete, but
unbelievable athlete.
Yeah.
He just doesn't look like it.
I always love that story from the Dream Team documentary where he was able to walk around Spain or whatever, and nobody would recognize him.
Go unnoticed. There's everyone else. Jordan, Michael.
He's walking by people with like his picture on their shirt, and like nobody realizes it's him. So I kind of pseudo grew up as a Jazz fan, and then I actually did an internship with the Jazz in my broadcast journalism career. They were terrible that year. It was like Gordon Hayward's second year. Not great. But so I kind of grew up as a Jazz fan, but my Jazz fandom is wishy-washy at best. I'm more of like a player guy where I just enjoy watching some certain players and in the NBA. But I'm definitely more college than pro.
Yeah, I am too. I am as well. Let me ask you this question based on all of that feedback you gave me. What is more likely, that the Las Vegas, are they called the Las Vegas Raiders now?
Yeah, Las Vegas Raiders.
Is it more likely that the Las Vegas Raiders win a Super Bowl, or that Utah or BYU win a national championship in football?
Oh, I mean, definitely the Raiders. I mean, you got a 1 in 32.
Definitely the Raiders?
Yeah, you got
definitely the Raiders?
You got a 1 in 32 chance.
They've been so
right
average.
Here's the thing, though, right? In the pros, right, is like you have a 1 in 32 chance versus a 1 in 120 chance.
Here we go. Now you're going to throw the analytics out. I was hoping for a more emotional response.
But at least, I mean, I know it's getting better in college football, but it's very straightforward in the NFL. You have your record gets you into the playoffs, and then it's to the races. Even in college football, even though they've expanded the playoffs, right? You're still relying
but it's still handicapped. Like
you're still relying on a committee to determine if you're one of the 12 best teams.
And the rich, with the current system in collegiate football, the rich just get richer.
Yeah.
And the transfer portal benefits which universities?
Right.
Like, no one's transferring from Alabama to San Jose State. Yeah. That's not
unless they couldn't make it at Alabama.
That's not how it's going.
Yeah.
Like, it goes the other way. All of the best guys at the mid-tier colleges are saying, I think I could play at Alabama.
Yeah, in the NFL, you have a salary cap, you have the draft, right? That kind of makes...
Right. But I think
more parity in the NFL.
But I think Utah's going to win it this year. So
let's wait for Cam Rising to finish the season before we,
amen.
before we,
you and I are very aligned on that one.
So
Utah has been.
Look, I will admit, BYU is, if we make it a bowl game,
you'll be happy.
Yeah, I'll be happy. Okay. Right? I understand where BYU is this second. I do think Utah fans are a little bit grandiose in their dreams, considering they went 8-4 the last 2 seasons. And I believe now going into a little bit of a harder league, top to bottom.
I would say that.
Than what they were dealing with in the Pac-12.
The last year of the Pac-12 was good.
Yeah, last year was great, but like, you had top-end teams like Washington and Oregon and, USC, right?
But USC had its flaws.
But then you had like the bottom of the barrel, where, these were easy wins. I just don't think you're going to get that as frequently in the Big 12.
No, probably not. Although Colorado did go to the Big 12.
Yeah. So. But you don't have like the top-end teams in the Big 12, right?
No, that's the thing. So, but maybe top to bottom more equal.
Yeah.
All right. So you're going with the Raiders. Okay, one last question. Would you rather ship your bed or ship your pants?
Jeez. Where am I if I ship my pants? Like, where am I shipping my pants from to as well?
You tell me. I don't know where you're going to ship your pants. You tell me.
I would say pants. Definitely pants.
Okay.
It just feels like in the bed. Like the pants you can throw away. What are you going to do with your mattress, right? And how hard is that going to clean up? And
mattresses are very inexpensive these days.
Yeah.
But it could be more expensive to ship a bed.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay.
So
there you go. 3 random questions with Sam. Is your middle name John? Let's do that. Sam John Hancock.
Russell. Russell is the middle name.
Really?
Yeah.
Is that a family name?
It is. I know my dad's middle name is Russell. I think it was like his uncle was Russell, and then I don't know where else it went from there.
Well, it went down to you. Okay. Yeah. We don't have much time left. This has gone flying by here, but I want to ask you about this support of EF Education. EasyPost. And I call it a Tour de France team, but this team is racing throughout the year.
Yeah. There's lots of races all year long.
And one of the fascinating stories about this team is the general manager. Do they call him the general manager?
Owner, I think.
Jonathan Vaughters?
Vaughters, yeah.
He's the owner. But is that what he...
owner, general manager.
I always consider him the general manager, but fascinating because he was a teammate of Lance Armstrong, and in the midst of the widespread doping of cyclists during that time period, which he participated in that era, and then he had to get away from it because he describes himself as losing his moral compass, and helped created this team. And the message behind this team is no doping.
No doping.
No doping in cycling. Tell me about that relationship between EasyPost and EF Education, the cycling team, and if there's any interaction. Is it just a name on a jersey? Or is there some interaction between the entities?
There's a lot of interaction between Jonathan Vaughters and our company, for sure. Not so much with the actual cyclists themselves. I think, we don't ever want to like bug people too much, especially since they're, training 6 to 8 hours a day and like they have to be in peak physical condition. The interesting thing about Jonathan Vaughters, and I'm probably going to get some of this wrong, but because it's been a while since I've heard this story. He actually was the one that created the process to start testing more efficiently for doping in cycling. So he basically was like, hey, here's how you catch these guys. Like here's what you do.
Here's what they're doing.
Yeah. Here's how you test for it. Here's the cycling, right? Like you gotta like, he basically came up with the anti-doping agency for cycling, right? Mm-hmm. And then he created this team that's like the anti-doping team. And, so he's like, I'm going to clean the sport up first and make it even. And then I'm going to go create a team after. It's been awesome. I'm not much into cycling myself other than, I'll do a couple triathlons a year. And, we had the yellow jersey there for about a day. I think I was telling you, just the amount of impressions that we got off of that. And articles that were written about EF Education-Easypost, and I mean, just crazy, right?
Yeah.
And, I had people who, I knew that were texting me about it. One of my guys was on the golf course and, he's not a cycler at all. And I don't even know if he knew that we had the yellow jersey at the time, but he just, was talking to some guy he got paired up with, and he was like, "Oh yeah, I work at EasyPost." He's like, "Oh, you guys have the yellow jersey," and he was like, "Is that EasyPost?" And so it's been really good from that standpoint as well. And I think there's a lot of alignment of kind of pairing ourselves with a team that's known for not doping and playing it clean. And it's something that, we talk about internally at EasyPost is not taking shortcuts, just doing things the right way and trying to, again, like I mentioned, we work with a lot of providers in this space, and there is a lot of times where, there's competition between our customers and partners, and, sometimes there's collaboration, right?
Yeah.
And that's a hard thing to balance. But I think that we've always taken this motto of, hey, let's do what's right and do it the right way, even if it maybe doesn't in the long term benefit EasyPost, right? They could go and not be the anti-doping team and win a bunch of trophies and whatever, right? Win a bunch of races, have a bunch of notoriety. They could do that. Well, I know it's harder to do that, but I'm sure that there's a possibility for them to do stuff like that, right? And so in some ways there's some alignment there of, where, there's a lot of things we could do, or, we could be, real mean to, our partners at times and say, oh no, we're going to take this customer because we want them. But we've really always tried to take the approach of what's best for our customers and what's best for our partners first, and then we'll worry about EasyPost next. And I think that's what Jonathan Vaughters does. It's like, what's best for the sport, right? Not necessarily what's best for EasyPost, but what's good for cycling all around, right?
Yeah.
And you're seeing that, right? I mean, even with college football right now, right? Like, there's a lot of people who are kind of disenfranchised with college football because it's become professional sports. And, there are the haves and the have-nots. And there's really not a voice out there that's like, hey, what's best for this sport? And instead, it's everyone's what's best for me,
well,
right?
Absolutely. And I love that you described that alignment. I didn't even have to ask you about it between EF Education-Easypost and the company EasyPost. Yeah. The concept of let's do, overall, let's do the right thing. And in the long run, that's going to benefit everybody. It may not benefit EasyPost in the short run. It may benefit someone else more. But overall, this is going to benefit everybody. That should be something that we think about conscious. Like that should be a constant on our mind. Are we doing the right thing generally? If we go back to collegiate sports, that thing has to explode because initially we were sold this is going to be great for everybody.
Yeah.
In collegiate, everybody's going to get paid. But I guarantee you that the volleyball team is not being compensated the same way the football team or the basketball team is being compensated. So what we were sold is not the truth, and it's not overall taking care of collegiate athletics. So anyway, the point that you're making, and I think that maybe this is a really great place to end this, is as we're talking about being leaders and in industries and working with teams and running companies and managing culture, along with, what is your vision? Are we generally doing
right?
If we find ourselves doing the right thing, we're probably going to find ourselves being successful and growing and contributing to society.
Yeah, no, I agree. And, it's to bring it full circle from where we started is, what's the bigger picture, right? And, again, I've always taken the motto of life's too short. Work at the end of the day doesn't really matter, right? what matters is, I know your daughter's here today, right? I have a family at home. I have, my friends and relationships that I really cherish. eHub is one of those relationships, right? That I cherish. That I don't ever want to be put in a position where 5 years down the road I'm not friends with you. I'm not friends with Wade, the owner of eHub, or all of our other partners that I've become friends with, right? Because we're like, what does that get me in life?
Yeah, I agree. Well, listen, we value the partnership. I'm so glad we had this conversation today.
Thanks for inviting me.
I almost said I had really low expectations. You exceeded all of my expectations. So insightful. Really appreciate your story, all of the things that you're doing with the company, and the thoughts about vision and doing the right thing. I think that's a perfect message. So there he is, Sam Hancock, Chief Revenue Officer, EasyPost. Thank you for being here.
Thank you.
Thank you for listening to the Know Your Ship podcast presented by eHub. Don't forget to subscribe and leave a review.